Still awake, this is good. My name's Andy Perryman. I'm the minister of Ashley Baptist Church. I'm a bit of a fraud here because I'm a normal church minister. Any normal ministers here? Thank you. Some familiar company. I know there's more normal, well actually there's not many normal people here, are there? Let's be honest. So I've been at Ashley, where I'm now, on the south coast for about just coming up to 4 years. Before that, I was up in Slough. Have I died? Is that better? Okay. Been in Ashley for just coming up to 4 years. Before that, I was in Slough as a normal minister there. But the reason that I was invited to share today, even though I live thoroughly in that left-hand box at the moment, was because I had a sabbatical last year. Please don't hate me. And I spent that time exploring something of just what we've been talking about today, about where people are doing church differently. Because my reflection was a couple of things, going, actually, as a normal church minister, I hear about these kind of things, where people are doing church differently, or fresh expressions, or pioneering things, but I never see it. Because, funnily enough, I'm always in normal church on a Sunday morning. And actually, interesting, as I went round, I discovered a lot of them still meet on Sundays. There aren't even that many that have gone that far out the box to meet on a different day of the week. And I'd already had these kind of reflections in my mind going, if we're going to reach people who we're not currently reaching, then perhaps we need to begin thinking about doing church differently. In the church that I'm in, we were talking about strengths just a minute ago, and I think one of our strengths is that we do connect with people in the community. And I felt similar things in conversations I was having with other ministers. We connect with people. We've got a toddler group. We do things with food. We do a community cafe, and we have coffee mornings. And we see lots of people come through. We're connected into local schools. We've got all those connections, but there's this frustration that we don't see it turning into people joining us on a Sunday morning. We don't see it turning into people becoming part of a worshipping community. And so the kind of rationale that there'd been before was going, oh, well, if people at the toddler group aren't ready to join us on a Sunday morning, what we must need is something else in the middle. Well, we need something else we've got to do to get them ready to be willing to put up with Sunday morning church. None of the rest of us like it, but we'll get them there in the end. And it's exactly, I asked for this slide to be left up, because it's exactly kind of what those arrows are about, aren't they? We meet people out on the right-hand side, and we're trying to push them down the arrows to come join us in the way that we're used to doing church on a Sunday morning, possibly even beyond the left of that, not even replicating it, just in the way that we are at the moment. And so my reflection was already going, perhaps we're called to think about things a bit differently. Perhaps if we're going to reach the people we're not yet reaching, we need to think about doing church differently in ways that are going to be more familiar and comfortable to them, and create spaces where they can come to know Jesus. So I set off on my sabbatical to go and visit a number of different places, and actually John and Ocean Church was one of the places that I went to, and I got to have a great time. Some of the things that I did was even got to climb up mountains, and that's just to show off of nice pictures I got to take. But actually, what I went away with really was expecting, as we're sort of a medium-sized church, that we might come back, and I'd come back with some ideas for maybe something else we would start alongside what we currently do, that perhaps we've got the capacity that we could do that. But the awkward thing was that I found it really to be quite a time of deconstruction and of challenge to what we do at the moment. Here's just a few of my kind of reflections that may stir with you. You may be in a different place. You may be much further down this road than we are. But these are some of the things that challenged me as I began to think about what we currently do and the way we currently do it. Anybody run Alpha or similar type courses? You know, all the different varieties that are available. I realised that our kind of experience and practice was we run Alpha courses, and we're really focused on community. Really focused on bringing people together, aren't we? We do food because we want people to build relationships and have that time to share and feel comfortable there. We listen to an inspiring talk, and then there's a space to discuss that and share it together. And the focus is very much, you can say whatever you want. You can say what you think. That's okay. We want to hear, and we want to discuss this and work on this together. And we build that community and journey together through that time. And by God's grace, so often we see people grow in faith and come to faith through that. And then in my expression of church, typically we get to the end of that, and then what we're hoping for is that that's been the thing in the middle that will now lead them to a Sunday morning, right? And then we expect, or we hope that they'll come to a Sunday morning where you don't sit in circles anymore talking about things, you sit in rows and you listen to the person at the front. Where I really hope that people aren't going to tell me what they think, and instead they just listen to me. And there's no food apart from a soggy biscuit and a weak cup of tea. And actually, if we're honest, there's not a huge amount that really helps build community. It's an event that people come to. And I just came away from that sabbatical going, why are we doing it like that? I was challenged as I came away about the people that we're reaching as a church, as I thought about those who'd been added to our number. And on the surface, we will look like a successful church where we are. But as I reflected on my 4 years at Ashley, I thought, who's joined us in that time? And I thought, actually, most of those people are established Christians. Quite a lot of them were retired or nearly retired. Mostly they were middle class. Mostly they'd either just moved to the area or were moving church. They didn't always fit into all of those categories, but most of the time, that's what we were seeing. And I thought, well, how successful are we really being? And perhaps actually all we're really attracting is people who are like us. To test out my theory, when I returned, I asked a members meeting. I said, put up your hand if when you joined this church, you weren't already a Christian, or you weren't already transferring from another church. One hand went up, and they'd actually been in the church for about 30 years. Some other members were miffed because they weren't there, and they could have put their hand up. But the numbers weren't great. And it was one of those moments for us as a church where we said, we look like we might be successful, but how are we really doing? One final bit of deconstruction before we get onto something more positive. Stepping off the hamster wheel of weekly services and weekly church life, it did get me to ask that question of how successful, how effective is what we do on a Sunday morning? If we're not reaching people and seeing people come to faith who are joining us on a Sunday morning, well, hopefully, at least we're seeing people grow as disciples, right? Our mission statement as a church is to know Christ and to make Christ known. So maybe the making Christ known stuff is happening elsewhere, and we're coming to know Christ more in what we do on a Sunday morning. But I'd already began to wonder on my sabbatical, where are the church really growing? And annoyingly, even while I was away on sabbatical, someone asked at a members meeting at our AGM, said, let's write down and share the different ways that we've been making Christ known this year, and the different places and ways that we've been coming to know Christ more. Very good. And when I reviewed that and what people had said, a few people did talk about Sunday morning services, but the place that again and again they said that they were coming to know Christ more, do you know where it was? Small groups. You know, we're all nodding because we know that's probably what really goes on. And my deconstruction was going, why is so much of my time, the church energy and resources, put into what we do on a Sunday morning? Why so much of the focus there in my ministry? So let's be positive for a minute. As I went off, what were some of the things that I found as we went around and some of the kind of discoveries from that? It was a real privilege and opportunity to get to just go and be part of places where they were doing church differently and reaching different people. And I got to have some great conversations in that with people who were just coming into church or just discovering faith or exploring things for the first time. I met a dad who was taking his daughter along to this particular expression of church, and he was like, I'm not religious. Okay. But he thought it was good for his daughter to be there and wanted her to discover that. I met a family with 2 children who come along, and even in our church, we begin to discover things like this where it's the kid who's asking questions about church. And I was chatting with this couple, and the mum did go along to, it was a church doing multiple different things. The mum would go along to normal services, but the dad absolutely would not. He'd go to this alternative expression, meeting up on a hill outside, but wasn't able to deal with normal church. And funnily enough, the mum was explaining how she talked with some of her friends about, first going to church, and her friends kind of all looked at her like she'd gone a bit mad. But when she started talking about what they actually did in this alternative expression of church, they started to kind of make sense of it. Probably if you start talking about, we meet and we go out paddleboarding on the water and we go out and we think about God, suddenly it connects with people in a different way to what they think church is about. My conversations with people who are working in this area regularly and going around and supporting different things, as I shared the stories I was hearing, the feedback I got was, that's what we hear all the time. Those are the kind of stories that we're getting of what's going on. And it's quite hard to kind of get real research about kind of what's going on sort of statistically, where people are doing church differently and in fresh expressions and so on. But some limited bits of research has shown that very, very roughly and broadly, about a third of the people involved are people who have gone from normal church to something different. About a third of the people are people who have returned to church, who are de-churched. And about a third of the people are people who are discovering church for the first time. And the interesting thing I found as well is as I went round and had conversations with people, is their openness to talking about spiritual things and about faith very quickly with me, a stranger. And I found that the conversations I was able to have were at such a deeper level compared to my normal post-church soggy biscuit, weak cup of tea conversations. What can we learn? One of the things that I thought might be helpful to share, rather than kind of the journey of where we're at the moment in Ashley, is some of the things that I picked up from the things I read and the places I went and the conversations I had about the kind of values that were being expressed and being worked out, a bit like the values that we just heard from John, and there's some overlap with that. But as we think about these things and what it might mean to do church differently. So the first value that hopefully they're all going to appear up on the screen. The first one was that again and again I saw that these were really missional focused in what they were doing. There was a real focus upon the mission and the outreach of where they were. I think we heard that in the first presentation today, how much the focus was about reaching people and about sharing faith. The people I talked to, they were excited by the number of non-Christians who were coming to the things that they did. One event I went to, it was unusual for them, it was unusually high. I reckon about half the people there this morning weren't a Christian. And they were excited, that was their focus, to be reaching people. What they were doing wasn't a stepping stone to an authentic expression of church to get to, we're trying to get to the real thing. This was worshipping community, but being excited to be reaching people who did not yet know Jesus. So often what they did was involved a lot of participation. It was multi-voiced. We've heard a bit of that already today, of getting people to share their own experience, discover how God is already at work in their lives, even if they don't yet realize it, of realizing the culture that we're in, where, just like we're doing today, we want to discuss and share and not just be lectured at by someone from the front. Just like Ocean Church, time and again, I saw that actually these were intergenerational gatherings, that people were learning together across the all ages. One of those people I spoke to with young children said, well, I don't know anything about this. I'm learning alongside my children. We're learning together and discovering faith together. And actually, it's the parents who are with the kids all the time. So equipping them to have faith conversations with their children rather than taking them away is perhaps more fruitful than what we normally do. Often these groups were small, and often, actually, or sometimes with a very stated intention to stay small and multiply rather than aiming to be something big. Because actually, if you want to participate and get people involved, actually small is what you need. Actually, as we've discovered in our own church, where are people really growing in faith? It's in the smaller settings where they can share together, they can participate, and they can take part. Often these things are relatively simple. I think Beach Hill really remind us of that a couple of times. Actually, we start with what we've got and what we can do. It's not about doing what everybody else is doing, but starting with what we've got and using the resources that we have to do what we can. And then these things are replicable. They can be led by normal people. It doesn't require a minister or someone with a theology degree, but can be done in simple ways to reach others. And actually, simplicity so often helps people feel comfortable as they come in. And the final thing, which is difficult, but I think really important, is that often these things were slow. We heard it again in the Beach Hill story. this morning going, well, we had a nice 2-year plan of how this was all going to work out, but actually it's not gone in that way. It takes time. If we're going to take that advice from God, that takes time. We can't just take an idea and run with it. It takes time to journey alongside people. This isn't going to be a quick fix that changes your church in 4 weeks. It takes time to meet someone who knows nothing of faith and journey alongside them to that point where they come to know God. And one final thought from one of my bits of reading while I was on sabbatical that I kind of come back to again and again when I question what I'm doing. People may well know this book, Letters to the Church by Francis Chan. He puts this in his introduction, and it's very annoying. Imagine you find yourself stranded on a desert island with nothing but a copy of the Bible. You have no experience with Christianity whatsoever, and all you know about the church will come from your reading of the Bible. How would you imagine a church to function? Seriously, close your eyes for 2 minutes. I won't make you have 2 minutes. And try to picture church as you would know it. Now think about your current church experience. Is it even close? And can you live with that? I've got a few questions that might be helpful for discussion. There's lots of text there. But essentially, the first one's around that Francis Chan quote. The second one's around who you're reaching, who are you reaching in your church ministry or the ministry that you're involved with, or what out of those values might be most important. I suggest probably you pick one of them or completely ignore them. Had to have a conversation about what I've been sharing. Thanks, Simon.